Welcome, everybody, to episode number 32 of the Roses and Rhetoric podcast. Joining me, as always, my charming co-host,
Joseph Stanford.
A fun-filled episode today. Probably going to do about a half hour today. Joe and I have some things we've got to get to, and also we didn't prepare much for today, so that is the reason for the shorter episode. But Joe, as always, we begin with a recap of your week.
Yes, and just to start, I love these more spontaneous episodes. I think they are where our notes are more of the non-materialistic flavor.
Right.
I think these are always the best ones, where we just let it happen.
Oh, there you go.
My week's been fantastic. I came back from Arizona, back up to Oregon. Oregon's finally turning to summertime. There were some recent mask announcements made by the CDC that I'm hoping that the city takes into account, starts opening up some things a little bit faster. But it's been a good week. There's been some current events happening this week that I'd like to talk about a little bit. I know that you're, Jim, very involved in the oil and gas industry. And as you know, there was a big blockage in the pipeline this week.
My wife, just to be clear, not me, but anyways, yes.
Yes, you're in a big oil household, if you will.
Yes. Yes. I mean, so the household's modest size, but yes.
So just to recap, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but what happened was there's a big gas line that goes on the eastern coast of the United States. And that gas line, some of the computers that control the pump stations, that control the equipment that moves the gas from point A to point B, was hacked. And we're not exactly sure who hacked it. Last I heard, it was likely Russian related, maybe not connected to Putin, but still in Russia. And the result is it's ransomware hack. So what that means is that they hacked the equipment and they say, we're not going to unhack it. We're not going to give you your files back. We're not going to give you your functionality of the pipeline back until you pay us a lot of money. And from what I understand, the company itself, the private company, Colonial Gas or whatever, actually paid these people $5 million to get regained functionality of the pipeline. So have you been up to speed on this?
No, I have not. I knew of the hack. I knew of the fallout, that it was on a pipeline of some sort. I couldn't even tell you the material, if it was a crude oil or if it was natural gas. You know, they all use pipelines. I haven't followed it.
I think it was gasoline.
We got gasoline. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, I knew there was a hack. I knew that people suspected foul play. And so there was like a hack versus a glitch, right? So it wasn't like a mistake, but like it was something intentionally that happened. But I did not know the ransomware angle. So that is interesting and shockingly little money, $5 million. I mean, this is, you think they might be able to get more. Right. Yeah, I mean, think of the implications for this. From what I understand, it's been pretty devastating. So that's why I'm thinking 5 million to me sounds a little low. Maybe I don't know the numbers on this, but it seems like that'd be a lower ransom. It's almost like when Austin Powers 2, right? When Dr. Evil holds a world ransom, but it's like for some small amount of money, and they're like laughing at him for not being a very serious threat.
Yeah, and they ended up paying it in cryptocurrency, is what I heard, because it's somehow less traceable.
Well, if they paid it earlier in the week, they got fucked. Depending on when they paid it.
So I don't know. Obviously, the biggest threats of paying the ransom is that like they don't have to do anything. Like maybe it won't work. Maybe you just send the money and nothing happens. They don't give you your files back.
Or they do it again because they think.
People are like, hey, that was pretty easy. Let's do it again.
$5 million. That's not a bad day at the office. When it reminded me of is, of course, the book that when we talked to Phil Lacovara on the show about his book and about terrorist threats in that book as well. And you and I were talking about people are legitimately concerned about attacks on the grid. And I hope people understand this is a part of the grid. I mean, this is energy transportation. It's not a power line, it's a pipeline, but they're both generating energy to some capacity. And of course, this is vital infrastructure as well. And so, I mean, it is an attack on something instrumental. In other words, it isn't just an attack on a company per se, but it has, as anybody can see from the consequences, it has pretty wide fallout when one of these attacks happens. And it's obviously a serious threat. I mean, it's easy to kind of laugh these things off as, oh, it'll never happen. It's just, science fiction. It's this and that. and then boom, it happens. And now all of a sudden it's no longer a joke. It's real.
Yeah, it's real. $7 a gallon for gasoline in Virginia. Most places aren't even selling gas anymore. But hopefully that situation is improving. And you're right. It is these systems have a lot of vulnerability baked into them. And if I could, there is a tweet I'd like to share that's kind of talking about this by the great Scott Adams. And this is what it says.
As long as it's not Dale.
No, this isn't Dale. This is
okay.
this is the real OG Scott Adams.
All right.
And he says, quote, "The pipeline companies should hire the election software makers to make some unhackable software for them. I hear they are the only ones who can do it." Why didn't we think of that sooner? There
you go. As long as they don't hire the people that made the Affordable Health Care Act website rollout, I think we'll be in good shape. I'm always surprised, and I think you maybe share the same as well, that there aren't more attacks. I think we've kind of talked about that before. I mean, there's so many. It just seems like, and I guess kind of on the outside, I obviously don't know, but it just seems like these attacks could be somewhat easy. And like I always just think of not even hacking into software like this, but just think of like how many people use bullshit passwords like 1234 or ABCD or their name or whatever. I don't think, unless you've had your identity stolen, I don't know that any of us, even people that work at these companies, are we really being diligent enough? I mean, like when I make a new password for my profile online, I basically use like the same password and like change 2 or 3 things in it. And I've used the same password for like any number of things that are fairly important, whether it's my bank account or my logging into my computer. I had the feeling, I know I'm not the only one, that we're not really cognizant that Americans have had it so good for so long that we have kind of forgotten how vulnerable a lot of these things are. And to me, it very much ties into the notion of whether or not we want to be a serious country or not. Like if we're just not going to take things seriously, if we're all just going to use bullshit passwords and we're just going to have, kind of the fly by the seat of our pants comprehension of the danger of IT or something, then I think we're in very dangerous waters. And maybe events like this cause people to take more stock of things that they should be more serious about, whether it's, how many people have access to your phone, how many, what's your password on your phone, what's your password for your, like, what's your PIN on your bank account. I mean, just any of these things that just make us vulnerable, not as individuals, but also just as, if you're working for a company, for a pipeline company or an oil company, and if you're just not serious about, making your passwords something that are well thought out, you're just a weak link in the chain. I mean, you're just part of the problem at that point. And so I do get the sense that we don't take these threats seriously enough, and that we've just have had it so good for so long that, for many people, I would suspect, our biggest fear of like somebody getting our password on our phone might be that like they read like a text that was embarrassing or something. But like, is anybody thinking, well, or if that phone is what you used to log into your work computer, now that's one step closer to somebody. Like I work for a utility. Like if somebody got my phone, it would be that one step closer to being able to, I personally don't have a job that you'd be able to do a lot, but that's irrelevant. Plenty of people could. Right. And it just seems that all of us should take this stuff more seriously. And I don't think that we do, because we've had it so good for so long. And I mean, these ransomware attacks have happened on places like hospitals, where like they'll just like take over a hospital server or something and demand money. And
yeah, they're a lot more common than you would think.
Yeah.
And I guess people just pay it. Like that's, I mean, like, what's the alternative?
Well, and how would you ever find these people? I mean, again, I don't know enough to know how you would find these people, but like, say this happened in Russia or something, what would you do at that point? I don't know. Are we going to go to war because of pipeline? I doubt it, but I mean, it's concerning to me. My first job at the utility was just a very high level understanding of the various, ways that even something like a printer could be used as a way to get into the company network that could then be used to hack something. Or, when we think of hacking, we think of like hacking a computer. Like you work in, you understand that aside from just computers, there are also devices out in the field that are sending information to and from different things out in the field. It could be, you know, a microcontroller or a little sensor or something. Like even being able to hack that could screw something up. If you caused a bad reading somewhere and they had to like shut the plant down because the thought it was about to blow up and it didn't, you know, that could cost a ton of money depending on how long it takes to work out that problem. And so all of these links in the chain are vulnerable. And again, it's just a matter of how serious we want to be as a country. Do we want to realize that we are under threat all the time from non-state and state actors, or do we want to just pretend that, you know, our worst phone can be embarrassing or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like first thing is like, why do we even have passwords anymore? Like it's the 21st century. Like
Right.
We have faces, we have fingerprints,
Biometric,
we have thumbs. Like why are we still messing around with passwords? Like something that's totally reproducible like that. And then because dude, I swear, like every like 6 months or so, some password gets compromised. Like Google
I got an email today from a company.
Yeah.
I won't give it out, but it said, you know, our profile, whatever, has been compromised. And I don't even remember having a profile with this company, probably back when I graduated and I was looking for jobs or something. But it is scary how at any given point in time, how vulnerable we are. Like I know people personally who don't do any banking online. Seems to me a little extreme, but I get it
Yeah,
more.
how do you not do online banking?
Yeah. And they just don't. And I again, I personally do online banking. They do not. But it's a matter of how seriously we want to perceive the world. We want to pretend that it's just, you know, the internet is just this fun place, or do we want to acknowledge more readily more? I just finished watching. I know you had asked me about this a few episodes ago. The Peter Thiel interview at the Richard Nixon Foundation. I know we had a few of our followers tweet about it or something to that effect. You got a lot of buzz talking about Bitcoin, but you know the actual lecture was much more broad than that, and it was basically, you know, a little bit off topic but kind of similar. And it was basically a conversation of when and how America would start to be more honest about the threat of the Chinese Communist Party as a state actor. And
Right.
it's kind of gradual waking up to the realization that this is a big deal. It requires our attention. It requires some kind of national strategy to figure out how we approach this. And, you know, to me, the bigger theme around that is just an overall conversation about seriousness. That what are we as a country and as a population, what are we going to focus on? What are we going to care about? What are we going to take seriously? And there are a few groups that are putting out ideas for that, but not enough. And more than just ideas, also, to me, the key point is strategy. What are we going to do differently? How are we going to behave differently? How are we going to act to reach those challenges and to basically to be in the driver's seat to some extent of those changes? And I don't know, it's beyond me, but I'd like to know that those are happening. People are talking about that and trying to figure out the answer to those questions.
Well, I think that it's going to require a serious reframe in the way we think about things now, because China literally is trying to take out our legs wherever they can.
Mm-hmm.
Like you look at, they're constantly trying to hack our grids, constantly trying to hack our systems. They're selling us fentanyl, which is killing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Americans every year. Like compare that to COVID numbers. Hundreds of thousands of people are just dying from fentanyl every year. And it's all from China. We know exactly where it's coming from. But I think that, and then you want to talk about like carbon emissions, like 85% of the world's carbon emissions come from China. Like we're just drops in the bucket compared to them. So I think that there could be a productive reframe of not like, okay, let's cut back our emissions and try to set an example. I mean, we should do that. But let's look at China. Let's make China our common enemy here against the global warming and whatever.
I agree with that on the climate issue. Basically saying that we need we need to figure out a way of getting many nations to cooperate. And
we need to get China.
But that's
no one else matters.
Well, I think India is a big player as well, and the U.S. is also still a big player, I think. So I mean, it does require
15%,
a lot. Sure, I'll trust your numbers on this. What I'm saying is that I agree with you, and I think too often we miss that framing of understanding that, and this came up in the conversation with Peter Thiel, is this idea of trying to figure out, are we doing enough to wrangle up our allies in these efforts and to really kind of form some kind of unified basis? And, what does that look like? And what countries do we work with to make this, a front for really bringing these issues to the table? And I think that's a fair point. I don't know enough about geopolitics to know how to answer that question, but I would like to know that I think that people are working to figure out that question, to build these alliances for that purpose.
And I think another one of the big problems that's going on with China is that one of our past politicians like really went out and demonized China and like made them seem like a bad actor and called it out. And I think that society as a whole has a tendency to just take whatever that politician said and then say the opposite and go with the opposite, run with the exact opposite, 180 of what he's saying.
The not filter or something, just like whatever comes out, flip a bit on it. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. So I think there's a little bit of that going on too, but my faith in governments to combat global warming and climate change, et cetera, is slowly faltering. I'm putting more of my stock in people like Elon Musk that are actually, I think, can make
trying to figure. Yeah. I think it'll take everybody.
You heard that Elon Musk, he stopped the Bitcoin. Teslas will no longer accept Bitcoin because
that was my joke earlier. That the ransomware people didn't exchange that quick enough. They took a 10%. Or I think more. Actually, I don't know the number, but it, whatever the hit was, they took a big hit.
They took Doge.
Yeah, Doge, exactly right. I think it will require everybody, but the one thing I do like about some of these kind of firebrand people, and of course none of them are without fault, but I do like the idea that they are trying to create a vision of something. Like they clearly have an idea in their head that they're trying to put out into the world. And I think that that's a good place to start. And I do think there's a role for the eccentric visionary to kind of, I always like think of like the joke with Adam Carolla of like the only way to build a railroad anymore is to have some crazy guy who goes out there and does it. And this is his life's passion. And he just, it's all he ever thinks about. And maybe that's what it takes for some of these things. You just have to have a visionary person who just is tunnel vision and that's all that they think about. But yeah, I mean, I think the framing, like you were saying earlier, and understanding the global nature of these problems. Global problems require global solutions, and it's not going to just be enough to go out and, not try to get more cooperation from China on some of these things. I think it's obvious, and it should be a starting point for many things, and it's the fact that we still have really innovative people in this country, I think is something to not take for granted. And it does, and this kind of came up in the discussion with Peter Thiel, that the West still is kind of the seat for innovation, but it's unclear how sustainable that is, because the time it takes from between innovation and copying, does the innovation matter that much if we're not able to protect these things with like IP or something? If it's just being copied or stolen,
it's like the iPhone comes out with like a new feature on theirs, and then Samsung closely follows it. Like iPhone puts a second camera on, and then Samsung quickly follows.
Right, but even in this case, it'd be whatever the Chinese counterpart would be. It's like Huawei or whatever it is, and it's just I don't again these conversations always get very detailed very quickly, and I don't pretend to follow all of it, but I do think that it's a thing that we need to be spending, I think, more time trying to understand is what is the long-term strategy. I feel very confident saying that a world where American or Western values are the predominant substrate for various people's expectations is a very different world than one where the CCP is dictating those values. And I think that should be, behind the impetus for how we approach these problems. Is, does it matter? Yes, and here's why. We don't want to have some ridiculous social credit score at work. We don't want to have, a ridiculous surveillance state, et cetera, et cetera. And we should assume other people don't want it either. And figure out ways of making sure that it's American values that are spreading, not CCP values that are spreading. And I think,
Yeah,
we should
and
all
CCP is Chinese Communist Party.
yeah, right, right. Yeah, no,
listening.
thank you for that. So I agree with you on all these points, and it's frightening, exciting times, I guess. I mean, it's all so big. I mean, where would anybody even start understand these things? I mean, how do you understand the IT angle of this? How do you understand the technology angle on this, the military angle on this? It's Hong Kong, Taiwan, etc. I mean, where do you start? I don't know, but it seems that I put myself in this camp of people that it probably behooves us as Americans to understand the importance of this struggle that's unfolding in front of us right now.
Well, another example of that is what's happening in Israel and Gaza right now. Like that whole situation just seems so complex. It's just beyond comprehension.
Start.
Yeah. I think it's beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop people from pretending like they understand it and from picking their side and demonizing the other side. And it's like, I don't understand where that comes from. How do people get such strong opinions on something that they don't even understand? I mean, I definitely don't understand it. I don't know about you.
Where would you start? Where would you start understanding something? I mean,
the Old Testament? I don't know.
Probably, I have no idea. I mean, even if you're to start in modern history, going back to like the 40s or something, even then, would that be far enough back? I don't know. I don't have anything to add on the Gaza-Israel fight. It's kind of scary. I mean, it's violence. Violence always is something to me that of course, whatever suffering is happening right now is of concern, but it's always, to me, what's terrifying is this escalation that's always possible. And I mean, like I said, I don't have any analysis to bring to the table. Just these are things that always concern me because the tail risk, if you borrow a word from Nassim Taleb, is always present with warfare like this. And it's, however scary it is right now, could become much more scary, very quickly.
I will say, I don't know if this video is real or not, but Israel has this thing called the Iron Dome, which I understand to be some sort of like missile defense system. Mm-hmm. And there's a video because I guess Gaza's been launching like 1,000 rockets a day at them or something. Right. But it's like literally all these rockets just flying over. And then you see these counter rockets just coming up, just blowing them up in midair. And it's amazing to see. Like, it's like, this video can't be real almost because it's so imagine the precision and accuracy. It's just hundreds of missiles in the air at one time, just getting obliterated midair. Like that's pretty badass.
It's I
how much technology goes into that?
Probably a lot. I mean, to me, what I think about is just what would it be like to live under that mentality all the time? I mean, I just can't imagine. I mean, think of in the U.S., we basically
stress you out. Yeah.
Oh, can you imagine? I mean, we have two pretty great neighbors, if we're being honest. And
I mean, we used to get stressed out over North Korea. You remember that?
Right. And what would exactly right. And
they're on the other side of the world.
Right. As far as America goes, Canada, Mexico, those are A+ neighbors as far as a lot of things are concerned.
Well, and,
I mean, and so I think I think it's just one of those things as an American, it's incomprehensible. Like it's incomprehensible to imagine what it would be like to live under threat of an airstrike. I mean, just imagine that. Like when you and I both grew up in Tucson, we would hear jets flying over. That was all training. You weren't fighting anybody. It was all training. Yeah. Can you imagine if you heard a jet and you think, well, is it our team or the other team? I mean, could you imagine that? I mean, we heard these when we were going to high school. Imagine being in high school, hearing a jet engine going, oh, is that a good guy? Is that our team or the other team? I don't know.
Well, for like the Israel-Gaza situation, like it's not like the U.S. is like this isolated country on the other side of the world from their enemies. It's like it's like Israel is like Arizona and Gaza would be like California.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's like right
next to California.
Even smaller. Probably like Israel's probably closer to like the size of like Rhode Island or something.
Yeah, no, Israel's very tiny. It's I can't. I have always wanted to go to Israel to visit it. I mean, obviously a very important place historically, and it'd be fun to go there.
Celebrate your people.
Celebrate, yeah. I'm actually not Jewish, which is not. I just always clarify that I look Jewish to some extent, but I'm not. But it would
I'm
be
a
fun
little
to go
bit.
there.
I'm Jewish.
Jewish,
Not Jewish, but Jewish.
Yeah, Jewish. I think it'd be fun to go. I have a lot of respect for the Israeli people, and it'd be fun to go there. But I would just be so scared of like what's
I know,
happening
especially now. Yeah,
right. So
it's a horrible time to go there.
Yeah, maybe get a good flight. I don't know. Who knows? Great time to miss. Good discounts between this and COVID. Maybe you get a really good discount on a hotel room. But
Airbnb.
yeah, Airbnb. But yeah, that'll be a trip that maybe gets delayed a little bit into the future. As always, we will hope for peace. But I mean, again, where do you begin to understand that conflict? I don't know.
I don't think you don't. I don't even think the experts understand it.
I don't think so either.
Because if the experts understood it, there would be a consensus, and there's no, so as far as I can tell, there's no consensus.
Or maybe even from that consensus, a way to like prevent things from happening, which clearly they did not. So I agree. It's a scary time. I don't think it's all scary. I'm still very much optimistic about the future. I mean, this is probably a darker start than most of our episodes, but I don't think any threat right now facing America or the West more generally is indomitable. I mean, I really don't, but I do think it requires a clear vision of what is at stake. And I think that is one thing we could all do a better job of understanding. What is at stake with Western values versus the values of the CCP. Maybe start there and understand the consequences. But anyways, on to slightly less serious topics. We began a new segment with our musical correspondent. We've actually had some guest readers. We're trying this out, kind of a prototype. And we trialed this last week, I think, Joe. And from what I can tell, it went really well. Tell us a little bit about who read it and a little bit more about the efforts that person is involved in with the podcast space.
Yes. So for anyone out there that's ever played beer pong before, they should be familiar with the celebrity shot.
Yes.
And what the celeb shot is it's you relinquish the ball to someone else so that they can have an opportunity to shoot on your behalf, right? And what we did was we took the celeb shot and we expanded it to our music reviews from our chief musical correspondent. And what that means is this past week, we reached out to another podcaster from the G&T podcast. Her name is Virginia, and she read the most recent musical review for us. And you guys can find that up on our Instagram at @roses_rhetoric, and you can find the full video. And she did an awesome job at doing it. And I think as a result, she's going to be our shout out for this week, right, Jim?
I think so too. Virginia, thank you very much for doing that. It was a wonderful oration of the review. I think you did a great job. We're going to put her Twitter below, or Twitter handle at Jeannie's Kittens or Kitties, I think. We'll put that below. I already fucked it up. Well, you'll see it down below. And then also her podcast, make sure people know what this is like. It's a G, the letter G, as in, I don't know, pick a G word. And
letter after H.
Letter after H.
Before H.
And then, yeah, there you go. It's only whatever time it is. Ampersand, and then T is in like the drink. Like I just had green tea because I was out of black tea. So, G and T podcast, and we'll be putting that below as well. And be sure to follow her, support her, and give her lots of retweets and other fun engagement, because we really appreciate that. This is fun. It gives us another way to engage with other people. When you start doing shows like this, you realize how many other people are doing shows. And, kind of part of our mentality here at the Roses of Rhetoric Base Camp is collaboration over competition. So how can we, build a tent, so to speak, of different groups?
Build that network.
Build that network. And so we're going to do that this week with the G&T podcast and Virginia as well. Very good. Very good. Joe, I went to the worst gas station in continental US yesterday. And I mean, when I say the worst, I mean the absolute bottom of the rung. I had a coworker who told me about an app called Sit or Squat. and basically indicating how you would actually use the commode in such a bathroom. Would you risk skin to skin contact in this bathroom or not? I had a hard time risking the contact of this place with my shoes. I mean, I thought I needed a hazmat suit to be in this place. I thought a body might fall out of the walls. It was so bad. I walk into this gas station, and the first thing, you always know it's going to be a rough gas station, Joe, when none of the pumps work. That's always the key indicator right there. When all the pumps have a little plastic bag around it, not even out of order. Just, basically it's like, is this a crime scene or is this out of service? I don't understand. I walk into the gas, and first of all, as you walk in, you notice that this sign is not only a gas station, also it's a deli. Whoever's eating cold meat from this place, I gotta really wonder about their IG health. I think they're not doing too hot right now. Mm-hmm. Walk into this bathroom and notice that the tiles were worn out. It didn't really appear to be any lighting. It was all ambient lighting. It somehow felt more humid than outside. It was like I was inside of a sponge or something. Go to the bathroom, which shockingly had paper towels, which I'm always surprised when bathrooms are stocked up with paper towels and they look so horrible on the outside. I was happy to find that because and I know there's nothing worse than washing your hands and just having these, soaking wet mittens and having to handle the doorknob or something. It feels grosser to be doing that.
The germs just stick to the surface attention of the wet hands. Yeah.
So I was happy luckily I only had to pee, which was really a blessing. And
did you sit or squat?
I stood, which I rarely do. But in this place, I should have been hovering. I mean, I really should have been like bracing myself on the walls or something to try to get above the ground.
Hoverboard.
As I'm peeing, I'm seeing flies fly out from everywhere, and it's just the walls are obviously full of asbestos, and just this whole thing looks horrible. And as I'm leaving, I see these two stoners try to explain to the cashier what kind of iPhone charger they need, and that didn't go anywhere, of course, because of the language barrier plus just the stoner speech patterns not being able to get the language across. It was so bad, I didn't even risk paying with a credit card. I paid with cash. Like, luckily, I had some on me. I mean, because I didn't want to risk them skinning my card or something scanned. And it's a horrible experience. And it really made me grateful for the good gas stations that we have in this country now. I'm thinking Buc-ee's, QT, Speedway. All
QT's a great one.
That's a good example of really having a good vision. You talked about Elon Musk earlier. The visionary behind the clean gas station. I mean, what a genius, right? I mean, what an open market to just really revolutionize how we experience convenience stores, actually making them convenient, which is a heck of a change, really. So it just made me grateful for that. And I wanted just to take a moment. Again, we're not being paid by QT or by Buc-ee's or anybody else. But if you're by one of these really nice gas stations, stop in. Give them some business because they really do a good job of making your stay there a little more pleasant than some of the alternatives.
Yeah, absolutely. And be respectful of the bathrooms when you go into these establishments.
Thank you. Yes.
Don't pee on the walls. Don't sit on the seat.
Don't do that. Some people must not know where their asshole is. I mean, the people sit in the seats. Do you not know where your asshole is? I mean, give me a break. What is that, Joe? What is that?
No, I found mine early on.
Me too. Important part of development. Now, yes, let's take a step back here, Joe. You mentioned a good point. I remember the worst time I ever had at an airport bathroom, which is, of course, already a rough place to be, right? Because everybody's stressed. Lots of traffic. Now this is a true story. People think, Jimmy, you embellish. Of course I do, but not right now. I went to this airport bathroom and I was wearing rainbows. Remember the pair that I stole from you? The rainbow pairs?
Yeah, you fucked up with your weird foot pattern.
I have one day we'll put my feet on this podcast. We'll lose every viewer because my feet are so fucking horrible. People who don't know, rainbows are sandals that have kind of that thick, spongy leather sole in them. The idea is that they somehow form to your foot, okay? It's also very absorbent. I was using a urinal, which I almost never use because I really can't justify. As Jerry Seinfeld says, when you're checking out of the grocery store, you have that little stick because you want your items, but you want a little real estate. You want a little property. And I'm the same way in the bathroom. I want a little property when I'm in the bathroom. I was using a urinal against my better judgment, against my better instincts, really. And some guy, clearly drunk off of a flight, just starts peeing on my foot. And I don't mean a little like a splash, Joe. I mean
on
like
my rainbows?
on your rainbows. I mean, he
okay.
just peed on my foot for like 2 seconds of pee. Now that is a lifetime, Joe, in a urine stream. I mean, think about how long that is. 2 seconds. Peeing on my foot. My foot, it was so bad, the urine puddled up in the little footmarks of the rainbow. I was
in the arch?
walking in pee for like a minute, trying to dry it out. But of course, you can't dry the rainbow because it absorbs, it's into the soul. So when we're all in the bathrooms, let's all just remember that we're humans. We're not animals. Let's act like it. Let's not pee on the walls or do weird stuff with toilet paper or write weird obscure graffiti that no one can fucking understand. Just go to the bathroom and then leave. And if you're paying, try to pay with exact change. Try not to have to do a bunch of change. Everybody should be using a card anyways. I know that I broke that rule when I went to this freaking place. But I paid with exact change. So I didn't even break the rule then. I wasn't holding up the line. But and also don't pee on people. I shouldn't have to say that, Joe, but I do. Don't pee on people. Come on. Let's all put that behind.
Did you put this guy in line? Did you
I couldn't. I was so flabbergasted. No, I didn't get him back. I was so taken aback by it. I couldn't believe it myself. I just had to sit there standing and pee. I mean, it was what the hell is going on here? And it happened for so long that my brain thought it actually couldn't be urine because there's no way somebody would pee on my foot for that long. It must be something else. But then I realized, no, it did happen to me. I was peed on, and now my shoes are ruined. Now, of course, I didn't throw them away because their rainbows are expensive, as you know.
But, as my checkbook knows.
Yeah.
My bank account knows.
Yeah. So I still have them, and they probably still have urine in them. And this is the cross that I bear. But, besides that, it's really a pretty good sandal.
There's nothing like an airport golden shower.
Nothing like it at all. It was a sight to remember and a feeling to remember, I think, more than anything. I'm rereading Skin in the Game. I told you that before we began recording. Nassim Taleb. We try to work him in every podcast. We're all big fans of Nassim Taleb on this show. Probably his best book. I mean, I was telling you and our friend earlier, you can read his books in any order. Read them in any order. It doesn't matter what order you read them in, but you have to read Skin in the Game. I think this really holds a lot of the formulation for the questions that we need to get better at answering as a species. And namely, again, this notion of when we act in ways that have negative consequences, we need to make sure that we're the ones paying the price for our mistakes and for our risks. And again, this guy over here peeing, clearly he didn't have skin in the game because he was probably drunk and peed on me with no consequence at all. So no skin in the game there.
I know we're trying to wrap up a little early today, but if you can flash that book cover one more time for us to see. So I'm looking at the cover, and there's a barbell on there, and it's an offset barbell. So you got like 3-4 plates on one side, and then you have only one plate on the other side. Real quickly, do you want to sum that up and explain what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So the subtitle of the book is Hidden Asymmetries in Daily Life. And the notion of asymmetry comes up quite a bit in Nassim's writing, and give people an idea of what asymmetry could look like. Imagine a financial situation where you could at most lose $10 but make $1 billion or something to that effect. Depending on how much money someone charges you for that ability, you kind of get the notion of asymmetry. The notion of asymmetry ties into like non-linearity, the idea that
it's kind of like a lottery ticket, right? You're only putting down like a couple bucks for the possibility of winning millions, hundreds of millions.
Right. And the key distinction with a lottery is that with a lottery, the payout, and you, in a sense, you know the odds. And kind of a lot of the thinking with Nassim is to look for things that are maybe more hidden, where the payouts unknown, the risks are unknown. There's this notion that he has in his work of what he calls the ludic fallacy, the idea that we try to, when we talk about probability in a textbook, we have the odds are given to us as part of a word problem. It's like blackjack or roulette or something. You can calculate all the odds. And in real life, we don't really have those variables, or we probably don't have those variables. And so you get into this whole framework of how do you think about probability and statistics when you're missing information? And it's this idea of how do you make decisions when you don't have an ability to predict the future? And that ties into the theme of anti-fragility, of kind of focusing on these system properties rather than trying to predict some kind of outcome. And which I think is a key mindset, if you will, for trying to, get us into better positions. It's hard to implement. I try and do it myself. I fail probably all the time at this, but it is interesting thought process of thinking, how do I make a decision today if I don't know the future? And, something as simple as like eating healthy is a good example. It's like, why would you eat healthy? Well, I don't know what adverse thing I will face in the future, but I will probably be better off if I eat healthy and work out than if I don't. I'll probably be in a better position, whatever comes my way, to handle it if I'm a healthy individual versus being unhealthy. And so that maybe would be more of an example of being robust. But there's all these ways of kind of thinking about system properties versus prediction models. And the key reason for writing Skin in the Game is this idea that people who are clever can figure out ways of exposing them to positive outcomes while shedding off the consequence of negative outcomes onto other people. And so you basically figure out a way to make money if you win, to have somebody else pay the price if you lose, kind of the heads I win, tails you lose type situation. And essentially, the poison that invites is it invites people to be risky because they know they won't be paying the price for it. And as a result, they take those risks and they find people to pay for their, miscalculation, or, if it's intentional, that's even worse. If you knowingly rip somebody off or something, but I would say this book, is definitely one worth reading. All of his books are worth reading, but getting into that mindset of, are you making sure that you're the one responsible for the negative outcomes of some bet that you're making, and anti-fragility, figuring out ways of thinking about the future without having to predict the future, those are both worthwhile exercises that we should be engaging in. And I think are necessary. And in a more and more complex world, it's unclear to me what other option we really even have other than to embrace these two mindsets, among others. But I think necessarily these two should be a part of our framework for assessing problems in the future, now, about the future.
We'll have to add it to the official R&R reading list.
On the reading list, and be sure to follow G&T podcast as well, and put all that below. Do you have anything else?
Let me check my notes real quick.
Let me check my notes. For anybody, we really did have like 3 things written down on our paper today. No, every now and then we do these shorter episodes. We like to do them 1 a week, but everybody who saw our episode last week with Grant Brogy, obviously a lot of work goes into that. It's a lot of fun, but nice to have a break every now and then from doing shows like that. We do have some other guests we're trying to line up at the moment. I think our shows with guests are without a doubt our most popular. People like seeing the people that we talk to, which is good because we try to find guests that we assume our audience will want to watch. And so we're happy to say that so far we've been successful, I think, in finding guests that people enjoy listening to.
Before we close out, why don't you tease some of our potential new next guests coming up?
Sure. Well, we have a potential, potentially very soon, a potential guest coming on, another applicant, if you will, for the GM position for our softball team that we're all very excited for. She should bring a very good perspective to coaching and to being in sport. Was a high-level athlete her whole life. Very excited for that one. and then a few other guests that pertain to the world of neuroscience. We've had a lot of good feedback from people that have seen the neuroscience shows. They seem to like those. And Joe and I do as well. We have a couple of guests that we're lining up for those also. And then eventually branching off into a few more topics that we've talked about on the show before. Some guests on scapegoating and violence, and some guests on how would I describe beginning or beyond infinity? How would I begin to describe that book? Some guests that are into that. We haven't reached out to them yet, but we plan on doing it very soon. Into more discussions on physics and really the philosophy of how science should gauge or interact with our ability to exist in this world. You know, as what does it mean to be human with a perspective on scientific and technological achievement?
Yeah, I'm very excited for that, for all of those. We got a broad spectrum of episodes coming out. So if you, the listener, don't like one of them, if you're not the biggest fan of intramural softball, then we've got neuroscience for you.
We've got neuroscience, and we're always open to other segments as well. So if you have any ideas, let us know, and we'll be happy to reach out to people and get them on the show. All right, Joe. Well, I think that went pretty well. another little half-hour show. But thank you guys for joining us today. As always, check us out on our website, rosesandrhetoric.com, on Twitter at roses_rhetoric, Instagram at roses_rhetoric. Be sure to follow Joe as well at Jose4_Squarevo, and Instagram as well, Jose4_Squarevo on that platform. Also, until next time, I'm Jimmy Hackett signing off for Joseph Sanford saying ciao.